Hello, good evening. Welcome to the 6th South East Salon. The topic for tonight is the future of art in a post-pandemic world. We've got a wonderful slate of guests tonight talking about how artists are producing, marketing, and selling their work in this current environment. One of the things I wanted to say is introduce you to South East Salon. South East Salon is a network and a series of events that celebrate Southeast London, that provides a platform for people in need, as well as connects creative entrepreneurs with resources as much as possible. We partner with various venues to have the event, and previously, before the lockdown, we were hosted by a number of wonderful venues around Southeast London. As we go online, the program is no different. So we are hosted by various venues on their social media platforms. In this case, tonight for this event, we're hosted by Nexus Creative, which is a private members club in Croydon that was created by Mark Sarfo and his team at Cellar Door. It's a wonderful venue in Southeast London, in Croydon, that is devoted to supporting creative people develop their projects, develop their enterprises, and running projects as well as exhibits. We'll be discussing the future of fine art in a post-pandemic world tonight, and we've got a number of wonderful guests, artists, arts practitioners, producers, and gallerists online with us tonight. And I'd like to briefly introduce everybody who you'll hear from, and then we'll hear from everybody throughout the evening. So Swakara Atwell-Bennett is the founder of Better Shared, which is an online platform for artists from the African diaspora. And she's also a member of Nexus Creative. Ainsley Burrows is an artist, spoken word artist, a visual artist, a spoken word artist, as well as a producer of a Black erotica show called The Sweet Spot that's been touring around the world. He is also the creator of the Maroons Rebellion, which is a collection of 125 original works on acrylic on canvas, large-scale paintings. Natasha Carowana is a photographer as well as an instructor at UAL, University of Arts London, and the creator of Work, Show, Grow, which is a platform that supports and gives exhibition space for artists throughout the world, but primarily in South London. Kimberly Knox is the founder and CEO of Ubiquita Worldwide, which is a production company that produces film, theater, music, and also manages a number of artists, including represents Ainsley Burrows and his work currently, and produced a video that you'll see shortly. And Roxanne Williams, who is a visual artist as well as the creator of Merging Inks, which is an interactive painting event that promotes artists and gives a chance to showcase different artists, emerging artists around the world. Before we get into the questions and the discussion, I really wanted to give a chance to start one of 4 videos we're going to show on the night. This particular video is about Ainsley Burrows and his work. It's an excerpt from Black Love and the Sweet Spot, and it was produced by Kimberly Knox and Ubiquita. And we're just going to take a look at a snippet of that video right now to get a sense of his work.
I took my first art class, and I was like, okay, this is for rich people. So I just kind of like dropped the art, put it to the side, and I focused on writing. So that's why I got into poetry. And I realized later on that writing and painting is similar, it's just different medium. So the Maroon Rebellion series took me 3 years. Every moment that I wasn't doing Sweet Spot, I was painting. I grew up in Kingston, but every year I went to the country, St. Mary in the mountains. You get your water from a spring, you farm your own food. So like those people are like regular salt of the earth people. The one thing they don't want you to do, is take from them, is their rights. And that came from the Maroons. That's why the Maroon series that I did is about rebellion. They were rebelling so much that the English Empire was like, you know what? Y'all could have the land. We're not going to argue about it. It's yours. We could. That's how much rebellion is in these people.
Wow, thank you for sharing that video with us, Ainsley. I'd like to start with you and ask you a little bit about your practice. This question is for all the artists online, but I want to start with you, Ainsley, and ask, how do you create work? You mentioned that you weren't classically trained, and obviously you've done a lot of other things before you started painting, but I wanted to start and just have you talk a little bit about your process, and particularly this collection of work that we just had a look at. I think.
Since I was a kid, I knew how to draw, so I had that like just naturally. But I didn't know how to paint. I took one painting class when I was in college. It was too expensive. I just couldn't afford it, so I kind of dropped that. But what I did was I became a writer, and I understood language and how language works and how communicating through language works. And I basically did that for about 20-something years. I've been doing that. So I took that same concept idea of how language works and I try to apply it to paint. So basically I use the same way I would use language, but instead I try to figure out how does the paint work and how do I now use paint to communicate the ideas and feelings that I have about a subject. So it's kind of just extrapolating from one thing and moving it over into something else, just moving one concept from one medium to another. So that's how I basically create my art. So it wasn't like learning something new. It's like kind of like learning a new way to do something that you already know how to do.
And this is an obvious question, but why the Maroons? What brought you to that subject matter, that history?
Well, I met this guy and he wanted to work with me in terms of like my painting, and he's like, you should do like a big project. He knew I was from Jamaica. He knew about the Maroons, and he came up with the idea we should do something about the Maroons. I already knew a ton of stuff about the Maroons, and then when I started doing the research, I realized how impactful outside of reality their existence was. Like they got the English Empire to say, you know what, you can have the land. This was in 1737. This is before Haiti. This is before a lot of the rebellions that you had. So like, and also their influence continued after them. So I just felt it was a powerful story. That's the type of people I'm from, like just rebellious people, be it in art, music, politics, whatever. It's in that history, and it was a kind of way to tell that history, because the young people nowadays, they're not really connected to that, you know. So it was easy to go to that as a subject matter.
Yeah, well, it's incredible, and I know you've got 125 of those works in that collection.
125 paintings, and they vary in sizes. Some 16 feet by 7 feet, and some small, and everything in between, right down to 36 by 48.
Okay. We're definitely going to come back to this particular collection of work. I just wanted to go to Roxanne and ask you, welcome you in and ask you about your portraits and just your process as an artist, as a visual artist.
Well, something that I didn't actually realize until this very moment is that my family hails from the exact same place that Ainsley's family is from.
Okay.
So my grandmother was born in St. Mary, and her, she's still got family over there. So I've got a big family that lives right there. So I can really resonate with the things that he was saying. And also what he said about the disconnection, because I'm second generation British. So all the things he was saying, I don't actually know as in depth as what he does. And now I'm very intrigued to kind of research that for myself. So I guess my process is being influenced by, things that are happening around me, and very expressive kind of strokes. So all my portraits start with just freedom and expression, whatever it is I'm feeling, layering up the paint. Like this one you can see behind me, this was actually done digitally. but whether I'm working digital or working on canvas, which I love to do, I just express everything, and then I'm really fascinated to see it in different formats. So the top that I'm wearing today is again another one of my paintings. During this lockdown, I've experimented with different formats. So I've done a bit of sculpture, which is this lady that doesn't leave my side at the moment in silver. So just really experimenting and bringing back that playfulness with different mediums and navigating this feeling and really trying to get a foundation again that's based on my truth. So that's me.
And I love that connection. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, I had no
You
idea.
guys have to connect offline as well.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a
Definitely.
collaboration in the future we could do in Southeast London, stroke Jamaica, stroke Brooklyn. Over to you, Natasha. Tell us a little bit about your photography, and we'll see your work a little bit later. But tell us about your work.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha Carowana. I'm based in Croydon, And I suppose just moving on from that idea of playfulness, which Roxanne beautifully told us about her work. So I work in photography, but I very much use it as an artistic medium. So often when I say I work with photography, someone will say, will you photograph my wedding? And I'm like, that's not what I do. I very much use it as an art form. So my work really looks at, I suppose, relationships and the pedestal of love. And I look at this kind of fiction and this pressure of performing these roles in society. So, and I do that in quite a performative way. And I suppose that's, if we're talking about our backgrounds, my background was, well, my father is a clown and he still is a clown. So I grew up with the circus. And my father's been clowning for like my whole life, like 30 years, I suppose. And, you know, that performative element comes in my work. So, for example, and I'll talk through this when I show the video, but I did one piece early on, which was called Married Man. And I wanted to look at, quite anthropologically, look at how the internet is changing relationships. The fact that you can go on an app and you can then conduct an affair. Mm-hmm. And like, how is that changing the institution of marriage through that technology? So then I actually became a mistress. I went on 80 dates with married men, and they didn't know that I was actually an artist documenting the whole, like the date. And, you know, I was looking at that kind of that interaction. So my work is kind of, I do 1 or 2, it kind of takes me 1 or 2 years to do a project. It's very long-term and very research-driven. And then at the same time, I run Work Show Grow, which was basically born out of the, I don't know, like the passion to show people what it's like in the art world, to tell people how you can negotiate, because I'm sure you all understand it's like what is it? Like, how do you do it when you've got no one that can show you the way? It's such a, you know, it's smokes and mirrors. So I really try and reveal things like how much pricing is, and, you know, how can you get an exhibition, and trying to just look at the hierarchy and not try and get people to not chase gatekeepers, instead to focus on making their work and making a community around their work.
Cool. Thank you for that. Thank you. And definitely we'll get back to the video as well in a minute. I want to go over to Swakara and Kim and talk about the work you guys do in terms of supporting artists and elevating their work, representing artists, and showcasing artists. I'll start with you, Kimberly. You produced the video, the video that we just saw, which is a portion of a longer video about Ainsley's work with his partner L'Oreal. Can you tell us a little bit about Ubiquita and how you came into the art world after having done decades of other more creative projects?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you, Jason, for having me and for having us and putting this together. It's been a really amazing process to watch you build this and grow it from infancy to where it is now, and pivot. You know, a lot of people can't pivot. So I just commend you for being able to do that so quickly.
Thank you.
I started out, my company, Ubiquita Worldwide, we are a global lifestyle brand of color, as well as a arts, culture, and sustainability agency. So what that means is that we kind of build out campaigns, but we utilize our skill sets and our resources from 20 years in the game. We started out as a nightlife brand, and we were one of the first all-female DJ residencies in New York City. And then that has kind of evolved. I've been a multidisciplinary producer for over 20 years. And I think I've always just kind of liked to, I believe like art gives you a level of flexibility that you can kind of be ambidextrous in what you do. You know, like you can really move from one thing to another. And so, yes, I've always been a producer, mainly live events, concerts, touring, theater, that kind of stuff. And then really, I would say what's happened now as far as the pivot is that someone like Ainsley Burrows, I've known Ainsley for the better part of 20 years because we both started out in spoken word, and he's a huge, you know, world-renowned poet. So we were kind of on the same circles and cycles when we were coming up in the 90s in Brooklyn, and this kind of like mecca of Fort Greene, where all of these amazing artists came from during that period of time. And so I would say maybe about a year ago or so, he first showed me the Maroon Rebellion collection. And I've known the man for 20 years, and I didn't even know that he painted. Okay, like I had no idea. So I was like, what's now? What's going on? And, you know, and where did all this come from? And they were huge, you know, and they're beautiful. And I'm also Jamaican, you know, like, so for me, it took a whole other level of pride, you know, kind of similar to what people just went through the other day with Beanie and Bounty Killer. It was like, we don't get to see that as Jamaican people on a global scale, you know, like, so when we decided, hey, when we're going to do his first solo exhibition, I was like, we need to go to South London. And he was really looking at me like, really, girl? Like, why do we need to go all the way to London to do this thing? And I was like, because I think that the point is, it's about being disruptive, you know, like I don't follow the rules. You know, I like to go and bring the art to the people, however I need to do it. And to me, when you are doing a project of this scale and something that is just a chock with Caribbean heritage, you know, and pride at a time in a post-COVID world when people are going to be afraid to go back outside. And in that, you want to give them something that they feel like, one, you don't have to go all the way to the Tate. We're going to bring this to you. We're going to bring this to Croydon. We're going to bring this to Peckham. We're going to bring this to Brixton. Because I think that's important. That's the audience that you want to see it. So I would just say that in general, my pivot into fine art just kind of seemed like a natural progression. You know, it's like, this is somebody that I already was trying to do some work with. You know, as mentioned, Ainsley is a multidisciplinary, you know, he's a poet, he's a producer, all of these things. So we already had business that we were working on. And then he said, oh, by the way, I also have 125 pieces of art. And then when I go over there, then it's like, oh, wait, you got like 400 pieces of art. And I'm like, well, now, you know, so at that point, you then say, okay, well, it's important for us to be able to make noise, you know, and I think that someone like a Swakara, which, you know, Jason, you connected me with Swakara, and I feel like someone like her, it's that person that understands that balance between what the traditional art world gallery, you know, format was, and how you can be a disruptor in that, how you can use tech, you know, to really, you know, reinforce how you're going to move, because as we know, it's going to be very hard for people to gather en masse anytime soon. So we are going to have to be able to get with those people who are innovative and think outside of the box as to how they're going to be able to not just present the art, but also let the art still be able to be impactful to the person. So that kind of is why I feel like this is such a great opportunity to have this meeting of the minds to talk about this type of thing.
Definitely. And I have to say, I'm going to pass the ball on this. I was introduced to Swakara by Mark and Nexus, and that was just such an amazing introduction. But I have to also sort of round it out. Mark knows the people. So Mark also at Nexus serves on the Creative Enterprise Zone in Croydon, and knows a few people that I know in Lewisham, Sade Johnson and Rebecca Molina of Shapes, who supported the last salon. So, I mean, we're all working together in Southeast London. But having said that, I wanted to go to you, Swakara, and just ask you about Better Shared and the platform that you've created for artists to share their work. How how that came about, and tell us what you guys do.
Sure. So yeah, thanks again, Jason, for organizing this. And yeah, obviously Nexus for hosting this. And it's nice that there's so many people from South London. I'm also in Croydon, Natasha, so we're probably very close to each other right now. But yeah, so Better Shared is an online platform. So essentially we're a curated marketplace, and we work with emerging artists from Africa and the global diaspora. So we currently work with artists kind of on the continent. I think right now we're in over like 14 countries with different, and we have a network of almost over 200 artists right now. And so the purpose of Better Shared really started due to lack of representation. And there was this gap between, kind of very established artists kind of getting out there. And then I was seeing sort of this kind of emergence of like emerging artists who are doing really well in certain like gallery pop-ups, especially in like, I used to work in Shoreditch, so kind of in that like creative triangle, and they were doing really well and kind of getting all the press and getting onto all these platforms. And I was like, okay, so how many people here are Black? And it was just like 0 to 1. Yeah. And that's really where the idea for Better Shared came from, was to create a platform that allowed artists who were kind of emerging and upcoming really to start to sell their work, to showcase their works, but also do pop-up events, and to connect really that collector and that artist at a much kind of closer point really. So where they weren't represented yet, but they were at a stage where they were kind of building their collection, and at that point obviously they still need to generate income. Some artists obviously remain independent, and then there are some artists who are kind of on that journey and on that process to be represented, and that's really where Better Shared comes in. So yeah, so we are, as I said, a curated marketplace. So it's quite weird, I guess, in this world of like pivoting, although we do lots of kind of pop-up events as well. Like we've done some amazing events with Mark and with Nexus, and obviously we're also based at Nexus, so that's our hub and that's our home. We are primarily online, so we sell work online, and we are starting to transition everything that we were doing offline, like workshops and yeah, kind of exhibitions really, to that online space. And I think it was interesting that Roxanne actually mentioned like the different things that she's kind of creating at the minute with her work. Yeah. Because that's something that I really like to speak to artists about, because my background is really more so commercial. My background is in graphic design. So I've worked with kind of illustrators and artists who move more into that commercial world for pretty much my entire career. So when I created Better Shared, there's also an education part of them joining the network and them joining the platform, where they learn different ways to sell their work, different ways to promote their work, and just, yeah, how far it can go. And I'm sure, Ainsley, as he said, he's got different scale pieces, and I'm sure you're going to probably work on different formats if you haven't already. And I think that's something that's really important for artists, especially now, to start thinking about, is how you're going to get your artwork to a collector. Maybe if it's not in a traditional sense, like what does that look like now? Like what mediums or how are you now conveying that work really, and what platforms that exists on?
Cool, thank you. And yes, as you mentioned, you're a member of Nexus.
Yes.
And so that's sort of it's enabled you to host events and workshops at the venue, sort of to help promote Better Shared.
Yeah, it's a great space. Obviously, it's quite nice for me since it's local. I am kind of born and bred in Croydon. I've kind of lived elsewhere and moved around, but for me, it's also really nice to be in a place where art is emerging in that actual space. So in Croydon, there's definitely been like a huge like emergence of art. Obviously, like things have always been there, but I think there's now more of a focus and a kind of importance in art. And creativity in general in Croydon, and in South East London in general. Obviously, Lewisham obviously and Croydon have now both become, they've both won kind of the enterprise zone and things like that. So yeah, go Croydon, go Lewisham. And yeah, it's nice to see like how many things were kind of picking up and things were happening from, spaces like Nexus and surrounding spaces, right around to obviously like big shows, like obviously Banksy hosted his show there and things like that. So yeah, it's interesting, I think, for me to for me, it was important to be in a place that, yes, was my home. And that was really important for me to represent Better Shared in that space, but also in a space where, you know, it wasn't kind of the obvious areas in London where people tend to kind of have art galleries and things like that. So that, yeah, that's been really important for me as well.
Cool, cool. Thank you. Now I'd like to take a look at the second video, which is from Roxanne Williams. And I believe it's about the event that she's created called Merging Inks. And I have to say, before we show this video, I hosted, I think, the second Merging Inks. And it was an incredible event. There's people painting nonstop, just like music. It was at Rich Mix, which is a venue up in East London. And when she asked me to host it, I was like, what do you mean? What do you want me to do? But you know, it was a great, it was a great ride. So take a look at the video. Cool, thanks for that, Roxanne. Really quickly, can you tell us about Merging Inks? One of the questions that I had tonight was about, you know, how we're supporting fellow artists, as creative people. Can you tell us a little bit about how you created that event and where you've done the event? Because I know it's not just been at Rich Mix.
So Merging Inks was just a great opportunity to bring different artists together to collaborate and express themselves, and most importantly, unveil the creative process and journey for the public, because a lot of the time people see completed works when they go to museums and galleries, and they can imagine how the strokes came together to create the piece or how it was sculpted, but they're not privy to the process. So I've brought different types of artists together, so fashion illustrators, scientific illustrators, graffiti artists, street artists, all different types, to create pieces and work for a set amount of time before they rotate onto each other's. And it's whether that process actually works or whether it doesn't, but taking the audience on the journey of creation. And it's brilliant because people that maybe aren't even into art, but they've come to see their friend perform, they get attached to a piece after the first round or the second round. And then once somebody else works on it, they're passionately upset that the piece they really liked is ruined, or, you know, or they're now excited about a new piece. So it's really fascinating for me because there's a lot of people watching that I do generally in my practice and in my lifestyle, that that type of reaction fascinates me, and just the education for people in a entertaining way. So during each round we have musicians perform, or spoken word artists, dance troupes, all different types of things. And the surface that people create on isn't always a canvas. Sometimes it's a physical object, sometimes it's humans, and then work at the end. So yeah, it's just been a fascinating couple of years. I took a break from that most recently, but just now coming back again in a couple of weeks in an online version on the 7th of June. So yeah, it's like what a few of us were saying before about learning new tools to be able to bring what we do offline into the online world and still entertain and do fulfill the purpose that we originally had with these types of things.
Thank you for that. And
so yeah, that one that we just watched the video for, that took place in London in Rich Mix, and it took place in Malaysia at the same time, as part of Georgetown Festival in Penang. The lady who organized it that side had participated in one of my events before and been instrumental in helping me with the event grow. So she moved to Malaysia, and we said this is the perfect time to work out whether we can make different cultures merge. So yeah, the influences came across. So it was really good.
Cool. Thank you, Roxanne. We've got a question actually from the comments from an Abigail Thomas. And I'm gonna put this one to you, Kim, first. She wonders what will happen to the quote unquote gatekeepers in the art world post-lockdown. And I think I'm guessing that this question has to do with what's going to happen to the more traditional routes, you know, the blank four walls and the white wine and the heavily marketed and, you know, movers and shakers in the art world. What's going to happen? You know,
I mean, I will say that I just believe that it's going to be a bit of a, not to say a changing of the guard, but there's going to be definitely a shakeup of what the traditional system was. And that system is going to actually, it's going to take time for those places to meet whatever regulations each city is going to require in order for people to gather en masse. And that's real for any city. We're in New York City. I know that if you even try to reopen anything right now, it's about filtration systems and your HIPAA, your HVAC this, and you're going to lose like half your capacity a lot of times. It's also going to affect how people see things. You know, like I think museums right now are suffering. You know, I think a lot of these larger institutions are going through mass layoffs and a lot of furloughing, and they're not quite sure how they're going to necessarily make it. Like larger, more moneyed institutions, they got a lot of trustees. They probably can wait it out. But a lot of other institutions don't really have that level of funding. And think about it, arts funding is the first funding that gets slashed in any city, you know? So if you were getting a certain amount of money from your, from your state and local officials or anything like that, that you're probably going to have some challenges. So I just think it's going to be the idea around gatekeepers per se. They're not going to really be able to keep the gates anymore, unfortunately, and maybe that's for the good. I feel that, listen, I believe that art, by definition is change. It means evolution, and it has to evolve with the times that we're in, and it has to evolve, and it has to be something that is going to be tied in to where we're going. The story. This is a crack in the universe. This was a stop in time for everybody. And with that, the time that they've had on their own, what were they doing with that time? And how are they going to now come back after it? That is going to inspire an entire new renaissance of work. Whole new genres of things are going to be made within the COVID period, the COVID era. You know what I mean? Who knows? So I think within itself, there's definitely going to just be an opportunity right now to me for there to be a little bit more of an evening of the playing field. I think artists can take more agency in their own work. I think they can just think about how you're going to get enough eyes on your work, how to make your work matter, and how to make your work something that you can get to the people. And that doesn't require four walls. Yeah. So I'm not saying that we're not going to go back to that system, but I do believe that the idea of, we talk about this all the time. It is a little odd that probably 70 to 80% of contemporary artists of color might be represented by white gallerists. That's not something that makes sense. And maybe that's something that should change. So in that, there are little things that now maybe can change for the betterment of the artist, that can be a little bit more inclusive in what someone, what someone like a Natasha is going to do, or someone like a Roxanne is going to do with their work. they're going to have a little bit more space to decide what that is and where that goes. And I think that's probably a good thing. That doesn't mean that we don't want to ever see things inside. I love museums. I don't want to live in a world that there are no museums or no galleries. But I do think it does change how we are going to see art in the future. Maybe you're not going to have those big crazy openings that it's like 700 people and you can't even see the art. Maybe that's a dub. And maybe now it's going to really be about having that time to just really, make a planned visit, that you have an appointment and you walk around in a very socially distanced way, and you might have masks or not. But the point is that you can still just go and spend time with the work. And I think that's kind of getting back to basics, if you ask me. I think that's a good thing.
Cool. I'm conscious of time. Thank you, Kim. I wanted to go to the next video really quickly and show the clip from Natasha. And I believe it's a collection of your work and some of the photography that you've done. And then we'll continue with the questions. So Natasha Carowana. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you for that selection of your work. Before we move on with the questions, I just wanted to give you an opportunity just to talk a little bit about, if you want to talk about the work we just saw, but also what you have coming up with Work, Show, Grow, and what people can find at your workshops.
Yeah, sure. I think I'm on mute. Yeah. So I think there was like two options here. I kind of wear two hats. I suppose I wear three hats. I have the artist hat, I have the community Work, Show, Grow hat, and I also have the lecturer hat. And for this, I was like, I could put my promotional video for Work, Show, Grow, but I thought this is a good opportunity to me be like, no, come on, artist. Because I think for me at the moment, it's been really hard to be creative right now. I've actually found it quite difficult. I can't get to my studio like ASC. I'm in my mum's house. I'm not even in my house, so I can look after her. And I think it has really affected what I've been putting out. And also because so much of my practice has been cancelled. I had a really big solo show in a museum in France coming up in October, looking back at 10 years worth of work and a book, like a big moment in my career, gone. And moved till July 2021, hopefully. So it's like a 14-month period. And I got really down about it. I couldn't quite figure it out in my mind. Like, I can't get to my studio, my deadlines have shifted, all my money has been cancelled. So what I decided to do was just throw myself into Work, Show, Grow and to build a community. So I've been working a lot online, doing loads of live events, doing Zoom events, doing just everything, basically. It's been exhausting, but it's been such a good distraction. And obviously I'm doing all of that for free. I'm putting all of this material out, bringing a community together worldwide. And then, week 2, people were asking, we want longer than the little 10-minute IGTVs. So I said, okay, well, let's move the workshops that I always did online, where I normally just did them in my studio, really intimate, just 6 people at a time. So very much like mentoring, I suppose. And so now I'm kind of opening them up, and I've been doing one on creative research, because that's something we can all get on with right now, like thinking about your work, pushing your work, learning how to develop your practice. And then the other one is around connecting. So really trying to give people the tools of how are we going to connect in this new world when you can no longer meet people at a private view. Suddenly the rules have been completely rewritten for artists. And one of the amazing things about this is the empowerment of artists to do the artist pledge. I mean, that is getting so many of my gallery friends, quite worried, because artists are now direct contact with their collectors. It's absolutely amazing. People they didn't know who were going to buy their art are suddenly collectors. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's been incredible, the response that artists selling their work on Instagram and such has had through the artist pledge. And the other thing that's happened is just actually, I'm now working on a new workshop, which is one I've done, but before I work with a grants writer, and we do a work about artists and money. So it's called the Money Workshop. And quite a lot of people have been through that workshop. I've been running it since November, but we've just had such amazing success, like 100% success of people coming on the workshop, learning about how to write about their work for a grant or fund setting. So that kind of different way of language. And so when the emergency funds just came out with the Arts Council, and whether you got it or not, we've had 100% success rate. So now I'm really quickly kind of making that online open to more people and making it international to try and help as many people as I can to get this free money that's out there right now, because it is not going to last long. Like, this free money is a very specific moment in time where all the foundations and all the government, they're like, oh, okay, artists, but it's only a moment in time. Soon it's going to completely change. Right. So that's kind of what I've got coming up, is this money workshop. Cool. Along with, my practice is over until next year, basically.
Cool. Well, hopefully you get that back, and we will definitely promote the workshop that you've got coming up to our audience, as well as everything else that people online have coming up. I've got a question from Alyssa Morris Vi from the comments. And this is for Ainsley and then Roxanne, if you guys want to answer this. How do you expect the closure of borders and the impossibility of travel to have an impact on your work? And I know both of you are world travelers, so you have experience traveling already. But starting with Ainsley, how do you respond to that? I think you're on mute.
In terms of like showing work, that might be the biggest issue. But what I've done during this time, mostly with all this, everything shut down, is I just create. It's been the best time for me in terms of like to be able to create. I don't have to do events, because normally I'm doing 100 events a year. And just to not have that pressure just off, I just stay home every single day. I paint. That's all I do. I paint and I write. And I'm kind of obsessive, so it's like I'll finally get to be obsessive and not be guilty about it. So I just create, and I'm not even worried about what's going on with the international borders and all that stuff. Right now, just my time to create, make work, go in and just make and create, and then when everything is back to normal, I'm ready.
Well, before we go to Roxanne on that, Ainsley, you also produce an event with your partner L'Oreal.
Yes, we do this event. So we do the event from home now. So it's literally, we just do the Instagram live. And I know people from all over the country, and we just fly them in. They come in on the Instagram live. We do the show. And compared to traveling like to Miami, Dallas, LA, Chicago all the time, I'm just doing the show for an hour and a half each week. So that's nothing compared to what I would normally have to do. Mm. We have to plan, book hotels, travel, because we do the whole production ourselves. So this is so much easier. We do it for free, and we just make sure that our performers get paid. So we ask for donations. And our audience, every week, they donate enough money for all our performers to get paid. And it just shows that people really do appreciate art, and people will put their money where their mouth is when it comes to art. As long as you make it accessible to them, I think people will respond. So that's where we're at right now.
I think it's amazing that each one of you is multidisciplinary. Everybody on the call, everybody in the show right now has either trained in one thing, has transitioned into something else, or each of you are juggling multiple things. And Roxanne, what about you? I know that you had some plans coming up that you've had to change slightly. So how does this affect you, closing of borders?
Yeah, so as you say, this was actually a time for me anyway to reset and regroup. So I had a corporate design job, and I left that just before COVID started. So the plan was to fly to Malaysia, be surrounded by the tropics, meet my goddaughter for the first time, and really reset the creative in me. So I've had to find that in myself, really. So I think this time doesn't really stop me from making the connections that I can reap the fruit from later. And also with digital, with Zoom, we've got Kimberly in New York. So we're traveling from the comfort of our homes at the moment. And I think that's the way to keep going until, I've still got my Emirates ticket that I'm waiting to claim on. As soon as it's safe to do so, after a few thousand flights have gone and people haven't dropped dead, then I will fly as well.
It's like money in the bank, huh?
Yeah, essentially.
Anybody Swakara, Kimberly, Natasha, you guys have any thoughts about the border issues and the creation of
I mean, I will say this, as you know, we're working on an exhibition over there and we live here. Yes. So trust me, it's top of mind all the time. But, here's my thing. I feel like things, we're in New York, and New York 4 weeks ago was probably the scariest thing I'd ever gone through, but I'm still here, and Ainsley's still here, and we're thankful that we were not sick. And with that, we know that just like how as of the 15th, now we can gather with maybe 10 people or less, there are also people who are driving to other states and relocating. So it's not like people are being that restricted on travel. So we just don't know when international travel will start again.
Right.
But all of these decisions are always based on money, as we know. So they're not going to keep it closed down for too much longer just because they can't afford to.
Right.
So now it's really more about being smart around how you move in the world. Listen, I don't care what they tell me. I'm going to be wearing a mask until somebody has a vaccination, okay? And preferably not Bill Gates. And that's a whole other conversation. But the point is that I know that we can't really make our plan kind of based on this idea that, it's not safe, because, you still have to live your life, and with that, I just think it's going to be based on what each city decides. You know what I mean? If the city of London says, listen, no planes can land from New York no time soon, then we're going to have to figure something else out. But I don't think we're there yet, and I think that overall, right now we're building out something that's slated for October. So fingers crossed. But if we needed to push it, we can. It is like money in the bank, just like Roxanne said, like if you got a plane ticket, you're going to be able to use that plane ticket. You know what I mean? It's not like that's never going to happen again. Right. I just think that right now it's really more important. I'm more in the space. I think Ainsley and I are both on that same mindset of, if you make sure that you use this time wisely to try to work on as much stuff as you can, to try to line up as much things as you can, so that when they actually say, okay, you're off pause now, y'all can live your lives, you can run.
Yeah.
That's the goal. And I think that's what I would advise anybody, is just get your stuff lined up and know that this digital space has opened up everything.
Mhm.
So if you know how to transition a bit, you're going to win right now, because now it's anybody's game. And I do think I just always encourage people to use the tools that you have access to and figure out how you can navigate your art within that world.
And I think also to actually hold on to what was beneficial about this time, because I have just the same as Roxanne. I just had a refund yesterday for a trip I was making to go and do a site visit of the museum in the south of France. I got £900 back for my 3 nights that I was staying, and I got my flight back. Suddenly I've got like 1,200 in the bank that I was going to spend to do a freaking site visit. Just like, what was I thinking? You know, I would just look at the plans, thanks, or do like a virtual tour. They can put me on an iPad. So it's like, that's what I want to keep hold of. The fact that also, you know, the bigger question for me here is like the environmental impact of all of this. Like, isn't it incredible that suddenly there's not the circus of the art world, like moving work to then move work, and the whole structure of the shippers, the galleries, the collectors, all of that circus that moves around the globe, you know, more and more art fairs popping up all the time, you know, and this real pressure of it. Suddenly, I really, really hope that there is this moment where we do rethink those structures. And I think, you know, there's so many online viewing galleries that are popping up. And I suppose we just have to see what happens with them. But in terms of the artist perspective, I'm like, you know, it's quite good not having to run around and do all this stuff. You know, a lot like Ainsley saying, you know, I can actually just be at home and be creative in whatever way that's coming out, which I think is just like, you know, amen. What a moment that we're living in, you know.
Definitely. Swakara, you got any idea?
Yeah. So I think, so with me, I work with artists across the world. So we have artists, so I'm kind of at the minute navigating, looking at kind of border closures globally and having to almost track those and track, you know, kind of shipping daily and kind of how that works. So for me, I've really been, I guess, being on top of kind of like what country this artist is in and like what then, so it's making me almost like market and promote different things according to different artists. So we have, because we sell limited edition prints and we also sell original art, plus there are some buyers who want a specific commission. It's really just navigating those. So for example, like Mozambique right now is still closed, so the borders are still shut. So right now with the artists from Mozambique, I'm making sure that people are wanting to purchase prints, because our prints are produced in the UK and Germany and then shipped worldwide, rather than, you know, pushing their original art right now, because we know, well, you're not going to receive it until they reopen. And so it's things like that, really. Just, I think, me being kind of the interim between the artist and the collector is just making sure that collectors are aware of timings, and also just being really honest about, you know, if you do want a commission, yes, it can be produced right now, but you're not going to receive it for a little while. And I think when people are doing commissions, they're kind of aware of that. They're aware of the timing. They're aware that, you know, things aren't made in a week and delivered tomorrow. So I think as long as, you know, people are still purchasing work and kind of wanting things, and it's something to look forward to. And then, yeah, I think it's just being like, just sensible and thinking in terms of marketing, of being like, okay, let's market the prints a little bit more right now, because we know that, you know, our print suppliers are able to kind of produce those on demand and ship them out worldwide still. So yeah, and obviously, yeah, just things like that. So just keeping on top of suppliers, keeping on top of, and having multiple suppliers as well. I know lots of companies have kind of like closed, or depending on how they work, things have changed. So for me, it's just, yeah, it's kind of just keeping the admin going and just keeping abreast of what's happening globally, really.
Okay.
It will come back, so.
Yeah. So Cara, I'd like to show your video next. This is the last video of the show, just so we can get a sense of better shared. So let's run that. Let's take a look at that video. I have to admit, all this talk about the online space, when I see a video like that, I do miss going to a space and just seeing your friends from across the room and like having a glass of wine or whatever, a cold drink, and just checking out the work in person. But having said that, I believe that that video featured Nexus. Is that true?
Yeah, so that was from our gallery pop-up last year with Nexus. So we've done 2 with Nexus throughout the whole of 2019. And we've also done a series of workshops, which went on for an entire month. So you guys can obviously see Nexus and see how, that offline and online kind of world comes together, really. That's one of our pop-up events. That was great fun. I'm sure Mark will agree.
I guess now's a good time to introduce Mark Sarfo, who is our host for this evening, virtually at Nexus Creative. Mark, tell us about the venue. Tell us a little bit about Cellar Door and how the venue came about, and what you guys do down there.
Yeah, that's a dangerous question, Jason. I can go on for a long time. I've got how much time, mate? But no, first and foremost, look, it's a genuine pleasure to have everyone hosted virtually at Nexus. So much talent here. I'm kind of like a little bit of a stalker online, so I know various people here in different facets, and your work is excellent. And to be honest, so Cellar Door was co-founder myself, business partner Farouk, and one of the other co-founders, Kenny Sykes, many years ago. My background is in music. That's in our DNA. So I guess it's moved from music to event curation for third parties or brands to then developing our own branded concepts. So I guess we just become tired of waiting for either a brief to come in. You know, when you're hustling to create, you've got to make your own luck and make your own opportunities. So Nexus itself was our way of saying, look, us coming up through the creative world, there are various facets that we felt were missing. That support network, that professional element to help take what is essentially a creative passion to the next level. So we just put the process around, whether it's just the environment of making sure that it's clean and it's conducive for people to come and work. And our long-term vision is always a long-term place about building communities. You're always stronger together. So if you're in an environment which allows you to just focus on your talent, because you're not worried about X, Y, Z. I think there's another great space in Croydon when Natasha's based, ASC, and they do a really good job as well at in housing creative talent. But yeah, Nexus, whilst the doors are closed, we had to flip and pivot very quickly, but we've been used to doing that for a lot of our creative life. So I wouldn't say it's easy. We've taken some of the content online. So we run Nexus Talks, which is supposed to be within Nexus as a physical space, taking it online. And one of the very first talks we had was from someone called Nadu Plaka. She does events globally. I know she's a friend of yours as well, Jason. And one thing that stuck with me, and this is why I'm mentioning it, because I know in the comment section, someone says, do you think because of this pandemic, if an artist doesn't figure out how to tap into digital art and create digital work, they get left behind? Because let's not get twisted, this is a massive shock to a lot of people. And there was an article that came out, I think today, the South Bank saying they might not be able to open until next year. So it's really going to impact the creative cultural sector. So by no way should anyone feel ashamed or disheartened if, I think Natasha said, you're not feeling creative, or you don't have to embrace digital. And what Nadu said, actually, she said she had to go through a period of grief of what do I do?
Yeah. So
I think the best thing that we can do in this scenario is talk to each other and support one another in that way, leverage off each other. Again, that's what we try to build within the community at Nexus. So we've got another Nexus member Zoom call scheduled for this Friday, where it's just for a chance for people to come in and just have a touch point. We like to think that we do the hard work of going out there, finding information, finding out what the funding resources are, finding out what the whole macroeconomic chat is out there in the big wide world, and just putting it in plain English so we can understand. A lot of the funding resources that came out, again, Natasha touched on what she's done. There's so many different sources. So how can you just condense it so the creators can do what they do best and create, So in a nutshell, I've really sped that up because I know that you're conscious of time, but in a nutshell, we've got, Set of Doors, the overarching company, which is event curation. But we put our money where our mouths are, I guess, and we develop our own branded concepts, whether it's, drive-in cinemas, rooftop cinemas, street food markets. We still DJ. We love getting behind the decks, although Carnival's cancelled this year, which is a bummer. But yeah, in terms of Nexus as a space, it's something that I guess 5 years ago, if you'd asked, even 3 years ago, if you'd asked us, it wasn't even on our horizon. But it got born out of a frustration, and we just like creating the platforms to allow people to do what they do best, because that's the opportunity I think that we thought we were lacking coming up. So yeah, it's lovely just to sit back for 55 minutes and listen to everyone speak. That's what we do. This is Nexus, basically.
Well, Mark, if we were live, I would definitely be introducing you to people like, oh, Mark, you got to meet this person, and buzzing.
Yeah, I think everyone knows that, Jason. You're a serial connector with people.
Before we go on, I think we're about to lose Natasha, and I wanted to give Natasha, one, say thank you for joining us, but also give you a chance to tell us about the workshop that's coming up. We'll promote this, but tell us where we can find Work, Show, Grow and the workshop you've got coming up. I think you're on mute.
So you can find it on Instagram, so at Work, Show, Grow, which is on my little name there, and also on our website, which is work-show-grow.com, and it's launching on Friday. So I hardly ever do workshops, to be honest. I keep it quite exclusive, just so I can give 100% to the people that come on. So we just have like 15 people at a time, and then we have a crit group afterwards, so they get to meet each other. I mean, while I've been sitting here now, I've just gotten a message from somebody from the workshop on the weekend, like, hi, we've met up, and now I've got a friend in Venezuela, and she's showing me how to do Instagram stories, and she's based in Brighton. So it's like amazing to be getting people to meet each other and always getting them to continue with helping each other afterwards. It's not just the workshop moment,
right.
Which, just like Mark said, it's about getting artists to talk to each other, because, we need to be there to help each other through within all of this. Yeah, and just thank you so much. It's been so amazing to hear all of your positions on this, and to just see South London and beyond as well for this talk. And the digital world is busy, because I'm also talking at another event that starts at 8:10. So I'm going to suddenly switch and go and be another speaker at another event. So thank you so much for hosting this.
Well, thank you, Natasha. And we will
Jason.
Check you out on Work, Show, Grow.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you. For everybody, I want to open it up here. We've got a question from Taylor. With so much economic downturn, how would you convince someone to invest in art? I had a question that was sort of like this as well, and I just want to sort of re-ask that in a way. Like, we all know what's coming. There is a recession coming. There's this is not over by any stretch. This is a health crisis, but then there's an economic crisis, and we all know that oftentimes the freelancers and the creative people and the people that are with multiple skills and serving many different communities, not just first responders, but people who are doing that frontline work and sort of charting their own path, they get hit the hardest. How can we support artists? I mean, there's, on one hand, there's making investment in artwork. I've done it. I've been gifted work. I try to promote artists as much as possible around me. As Kim said, I'm working on a project with Ainsley and Ubiquita for the fall here. We're still going to move that forward. But on a much smaller scale, what opportunities are there? How do we support each other? So I just want to open up to the group, whoever wants to fire off.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. So I think, it depends on who your audience is. There will always be people who have capital to invest in art. And also art is an investment. I would say it's one of the most beautiful investments you can make. It's something that you can look at and admire every day, as well as it potentially making you money in the future. So right now, I think it's really looking at, I said, your audience. So who is your core audience? Like, are they going to be obviously everyone will be affected by the downturn, and by the recession, but there'll always be people who are not necessarily as massively affected by it. There's also things that I'm sure different artists have been done, like the artist pledge, for example, if you're producing huge, large scale pieces, or even pieces that are, that obviously cost a lot to create initially, and obviously then cost a lot to maybe ship and things like that. Obviously, scale is one way that people are looking at, kind of smaller pieces that are smaller scale, and obviously like a smaller cost. So it's, again, more affordable for people. And just looking at, again, I think where your art is going. So, are there other ways that people can invest in you that may not be, a huge original piece? Is there smaller ways that they can invest in you or keep investing in you? Or is there a way that they can support you on, maybe a smaller incremental cost? So looking at ways that people can break down costs, so it is more affordable each kind of month by month. So I think it's about, firstly, knowing who your audience is and knowing how they're going to be affected by this. And secondly, looking at ways to make your art, obviously your art, as I said, it is an investment, and reminding people that, but also is there maybe more affordable ways to invest in you as an artist?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I agree.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I totally agree with Swakara. I think right now what you're finding is the markets are unstable. And because the markets are unstable, there are going to be certain things that you can always invest in. You can always invest in gold. You can always invest in real estate. You can always invest in art. Those are things that, from a space, and I think for people of color, it's also that conversation around generational wealth, the idea of buying something that you can now, hand down in your family line, and it appreciates in value. I think that's something that we've never really been taught. And I think I have to say I credit the quote unquote hip hop generation, because when hip hop discovered fine art, it worked out for all of us. You know what I mean? Like, it really did, because now they're kind of really kind of leading the charge. If you look at somebody like a Swiss Beats and No Commission, the idea around artists taking more agency with their work, your art is worth a lot of money. And it is important. I'm not saying that everybody's art is on the same levels around how people price things and whatever. That's all relative. You know what I mean? It really is. Like, you could see something that can be like, oh, I remember, amazing street artists, in New York, we had the mecca of so many amazing street artists that blew up to be huge, huge, huge artists, but sometimes, a Banksy will be more expensive than a Basquiat. You know what I mean? Like, there is something about the commercial merger that I think, from an advertising perspective, from a lot of different perspectives, that there's a lot of other ways that you can move with your art. You can license your work. You can do a lot of different things. And I think artists were now going to be forced to learn more about the business of art for themselves, and not just blindly depend on others to guide them around as to what they should do. And I think that, again, is going to really help to evolve how everything works and moves, But, for now, I just think it's one of the safer things to invest in, because these markets are going to be unstable for at least the next couple of years. Yeah. And with that, I think there is going to be kind of people who already know, people who are already avid collectors, please believe they're about to double down, like, they're really about to be like, oh, any artist that they had been looking at for a little bit, now they're just going to just for safekeeping, I'm going to buy up a bunch of their stuff, because now there's also a lot more happening around the world of art investment groups, people who are pooling their money to just invest in an artist and then just drive the sale up. So you could do a whole TED talk just around how, just around like the ins and outs of how the art world works and how you kind of come to pricing. But I think it's always going to be a good thing for artists to kind of look at more ways of getting a check with your work. It doesn't always have to come from hanging in that building and getting a red dot. It can also come from, oh, you licensed it for this particular project, or you're working on this particular initiative, or however it is. But the point is that start to look a little bit outside the box. And I think you'll find there's a lot of crayons to color with, like, there's a lot of things you can do. So I just think it's worth it to just start to explore and expand how you're thinking about monetizing your work.
Oh, thanks, Kim. Roxanne, what do you think?
Yeah. I agree, really. I think that if we just have to keep diversifying and finding what niches work for us. One of the things that I did a few weeks ago was take part in another person's live painting event. And then someone from their audience bought the piece that I was just, for me, it was just a doodle. You know, it wasn't something that I took seriously as much as I do like some of the other stuff that I work on. But that became real money within a couple of hours. So I think you have to have an open mind and really hustle and respect your own hustle. Like, I didn't even know that when I took part in it, I was just going forth and wanting to share and going on someone else's platform, but it really worked out in my favor. So I think that's something that artists can look at going forward.
Ainsley, thank you, Roxanne. Ainsley, I want to ask you, but before, I just want to interject here that the work that we're developing together through Ubiquita is multifaceted. I think that it's about the exhibition of the work in accessible spaces for a larger community to see the work, communities that the subject matter will resonate with, communities in Britain who might not know this story that definitely need to know the story, because I think, especially today, the concept of being Black and British, a lot of people are learning what that really means. But there's also the sales of the work, which is
how we support artists. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to get a piece of artwork from you, even though that's actually an investment for yourself and in the artist, but also you can just be a patron. It's, hey, I'll send you $20 every month. And it's that simple. It doesn't have to be anything major. I love what you're doing. I want you to continue doing it. I'll send you $20 a month. I'll tell all my friends about it. I'll share this on my social media. It's the little things that really count, because you might know somebody who will buy, or you might know somebody who will be like, you know what, I like the fact you're doing this. I want to do it also. And there goes an artist now, is able to pay their rent, is able to eat, is able to, and I'll be able to make art. And sometimes somebody's success, for me personally, is just as good as having a piece of their art. Like, the event that we do is literally just creating a platform for other artists. And sometimes just that, to see somebody go from A to Z and become this other thing, is the payoff that you get, So yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I think that's important. There's several ways you can support artists doing their craft, and not just in the final product, as you say, but helping them along their way. Mark, I'd like to bring it back to you, and just, I'm conscious of time, might wrap it up fairly shortly. But I wanted to ask you about the work you're doing with the Creative Enterprise Zone. We're being hosted in Croydon right now, and I wanted you to have a chance to talk about the work of the Creative Enterprise Zone, as well as some of the other things you're doing outside of Nexus, outside of Celador.
Yo, I'm here. Yeah, so the Creative Enterprise Zone, as Swakara touched on earlier, so we're one of 6 boroughs to win the Mayor's inaugural Creative Enterprise Zone back in 2018. I think it's due to come to an end next year. It's been really good at, I think the best thing for us is the ability to hold the local authority accountable, because if they're putting a hat on, quite often we see it, people say one thing, and then once you've got the award and you've got the hat, then they move on and they forget about the creative. But Croydon's got a really strong creative community across different disciplines. So you've got the visual arts, the performing arts, music, and it's a great mechanism to, one, bring people together, to hold regular conversations, and I think it's been good and pretty evident on the back of COVID and COVID-19. So it's allowed at least there to be a focal point through the cultural team of people coming together. And also it's allowed, the season's allowed us to, like I said, hold the authority accountable. So if they're going to say they're going to do something, then we've got what the measure is, and we can challenge them if it's not been done. Mm-hmm. So within the CZ, I chair the steering group. So we meet up every, I think it's about 6 to 8 weeks, just to go through the different deliverables and see how we're hitting. Definitely pre-COVID, the key challenge was around workspace provisions. So actual space, like we've all seen, it doesn't matter what side of the pond you are, gentrification and what happens when developers go in and take over spaces, and a lack of artist space. So the CZ has been quite instrumental in ensuring that spaces within Croydon in particular are protected. So one of the key strands that we put into the bid was around business rate relief. On the back of the CZ, ASC came into Croydon. Maybe 3-6 months into them being there, it was half occupied. People were still looking at, I've got to be in Brixton, I've got to be in Peckham, I've got to be in Shoreditch. Mm-hmm. But now they're close to full occupancy because people are recognizing the value of staying local. And you're probably going to see that even more now because of COVID. So whilst there will be social distancing that have to come to play, this won't last forever. It will come to an end. And what we'll find is actually communities will come close together because of that. Mm-hmm. No longer would we have to keep going uptown. Like Croydon, people used to always joke, oh, Croydon's too far, or Croydon's this, but half the cats who are in the creative scene who go and work up in Shoreditch are based in Croydon anyway. So now that they're down here, and then even those in the corporate world, there isn't the need to go up and work in the shiny offices uptown. You're going to have people staying locally. So in them staying locally, whether you're corporate or creative, you're going to have to be entertained, and you're going to have to embrace the culture. And that's where I think the creators will really kick off on the back of this, So, and I think the CZ is a good stepping stone for us because, like Lewisham, we also got awarded the Bar of Culture. Is it Bar of Culture?
Bar of Culture.
Yeah, London Bar of Culture, we did. Yeah, so I think
they pushed it back a year, right? I think
Lewisham's been knocked back to 2022, but I think we're still on for 2023. Okay. So it'd be a nice flow. So that will allow collaboration. Like Swakara and myself came into South East Salon down in Lewisham, and it's just good to see the connections and South talking and avenues like this, mediums like this. I think is excellent. I think the job you're doing in really creating, enlarging the community. So we're talking out. We're not in an echo chamber, So actually, what are our neighbours doing? I think is great.
Cool.
And your second question, I think I forgot what it was.
I think that was it. I just wanted to be able to talk about the work that you're doing outside with the Creative Enterprise Zone. Because I think, especially being hosted in Croydon, I think it's important for us to elevate that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I don't think COVID it's not going, like I said, it's not going to be here forever. So getting through this period is one thing. It's more about the recovery. So as soon as people are able to, once that grief period is over and that creativity is still coming out, it's about, okay, how can I be fit for purpose so I can recover? And also take responsibility. So let's not hide behind institutions, because institutions, we're seeing them coming out saying, we haven't got enough reserves or we're not fit for purpose. Their business models were good because they rely on ticket income and it's, push the button, everyone goes to the same place. But now that those, the rug's been pulled out from underneath them and it's exposed to fragility of the sector. So the more we can take ownership ourselves and say, I've got to do this for me, and I've got to be responsible for me, and go with a sense of pride. Know your worth. So when you are talking and when you are negotiating as an artist, have a sense of pride that you've got a skill set that is valued, and the social isolation that's come on because of their self-isolation, it's also probably enhanced how much culture and creativity is important. Like the touch, the smell, engaging with people. There's now thirst for it. So again, once we're let out the cages and it's full steam ahead, again, I think creativity will just spiral out of control, and we want to make sure that we own our piece and our conversation, and don't let it get maneuvered or taken in a different direction. But it all starts with the individual themselves.
Well, we will definitely see you at the Maroons Rebellion show at Nexus when that happens.
For sure.
Listen, in closing, I just wanted to give everybody a chance to say one final word about what you have coming up next, where we can find your work. Just a final plug, really. Just a little parting shot. Can we start with you, Swakara?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks everyone. Yeah, it's been an amazing talk. Nice to hear everything, from everyone and kind of what everyone's up to. So we have our creative workshops are going online next month. So we have going forward all of our workshops, so creative workshops that we've also hosted with Nexus. If you came to one of those, we've got everything from kind of painting, body positivity. We've got, again, like textural, so things that you can do. I know, obviously, Jason, you have also kind of been using kind of the coloring doodles that we've given out for free. So we've got some creative activities. So we've got those workshops coming up next month that you'll be able to book on Better Shared. So I'll be sharing more details about them. But all you have to do right now is just follow our Instagram page, so at Better Shared, and we're at Better Shared on everything. And then also sign up to our newsletter, because you'll get that information there first. So look out for creative workshops. So they are workshops led by the artists who, obviously, if you want to buy one of their pieces, then great. But they're led by the creative experts who are part of the Better Shared network.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Cool. Roxanne, thank you, Swakara. Roxanne?
Yeah, so again, thanks for having me. It's really been interesting. Might have even met a family member, we don't know. So what's up next for me is I'm working on the next Merging Inks event and bringing that online. So as I said, that should be Sunday, the 7th of June. And I have performers and artists already lined up, so that should be exciting. And also for myself, I'm just developing my body of work further. I'm working on a clothing collection. I've just finished a children's book. So I'm pumping out a lot of stuff over here.
Cool.
So just watch this space.
The children's book, I'm supposed to check that out. I'm one of the testers, right? Okay, cool.
That's it.
Right. Kimberly?
Yeah, there's a lot happening, definitely, all the time. What I would say is this, like, we're kind of making a major pivot right now. Pivot is the word. Into building out these public health initiatives here in New York that are going to be designed to also help to bail out the cultural institution. And that within itself is something that kind of brings together these worlds of media and medicine, for the good, in a way that we can potentially hope to start to just push the needle around the inequities within the healthcare system here in this country around Black and Brown communities. So we're doing a lot of work moving into that direction, both media projects on major networks, as well as an opportunity to kind of really aid in COVID-19 testing and setting up, a level of, I would say, kind of a network around aligning medical professionals of color and building these access points within our communities so that we can rebuild some level of trust and hope to knock down the testing, which is massive in this country. Like, we are way behind in our testing goals. And I think for communities of color, we are the ones that get the most affected for multiple reasons. And I know that that's a global conversation, but here it's very dire, as I'm sure you guys have all seen. So I feel like, what I have noticed is that it has been the events industry and the production industry and the media industry and the arts industry, the creative industry, that have kind of showed up and helped to, switch out a Javits Center and turn it into a hospital and build out these pop-up testing initiatives that are all production people. As many of us, I got my entire season, my 20th anniversary season as a brand got canceled, summarily canceled. With projects all over the world. But I think now new projects have now come into place that are even more fruitful, for how we get out of this together, which is what I say. It's like we are the ones we've been waiting for. So we're just kind of trying to go with that. We're still building out Ainsley's exhibition in the fall. We have a bunch of new projects that we're building out with his company, Burrows Inc., as far as, scripted and non-scripted, content projects, launching a content studio. So it's just a lot of things. But strangely, they all seem to kind of fit together around how we get out of it. So that's kind of what we have going on over here.
Thank you. I think that's an interesting piece about linking the cultural institutions with finding solutions with this health crisis worldwide.
Yeah.
When's the next sweet spot? What's going on?
Next sweet spot is Thursday. It's every Thursday, 11 p.m. I know it's a little late.
Eastern.
U.S. Black match is like 4 o'clock in the morning for you.
Yeah.
It stays on IGTV every week. We bring in people from all over the country. It's all erotica because that's what we do. We're trying to have a wider conversation about erotica, about sex, about sexuality, and that's what we do, is particularly for Black people, because it's a very, very difficult conversation and difficult subject for Black people to deal with because of the history in some places and because of what we know, whatever it is. But it's every Thursday at 11 o'clock. It's a lot of fun. It gets you out of all of the crazy stuff that's going on around. You get an hour and a half. Just have some fun. It's funny. We have comedians, burlesque dancers, poets, different people that's in the sex positive community that come in and they have conversations, and it's a really fast show. It's a lot of fun. It's at Sweet Spot Nation on Instagram.
And thank you. And it's up for 24 hours, right? It'll be up for 24 hours.
Forever now, because before it used to just be on the replay on Instagram Live, but now it saves automatically to IGTV. Cool. So it's there. So if you go and look at it right now, you'll see the past 2 weeks are up there. Okay, cool. It's a lot of fun. Check it out. If you want to see my artwork, yes. It's neochaosnow.com. It has my paintings. It has my novels, my poetry, written and recorded, and just random stuff on there. Check it out.
All right. Thank you, Ainsley. And Mark, what's going on next at Nexus or Cellar Door? What do you guys have coming up?
Yeah, so we've got the next round of our Nexus talks taking place. I think next one is Tuesday, the 2nd of June. We do them every Tuesday. Next up, we've got a really cool dude called Samuel Mensah. He's a creative director, project designer. He's created loads of campaigns for big brands. Very nonchalant. He just cracks and does his work, but his impact is immense. So it's every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Next one's 2nd of June. We're working on some outdoor stuff involving big screens for the summer. That's on the event side. So hopefully that kicks off with, we should be announcing in the next 2 weeks what's happening there. And we're doing some work behind the scenes involving the whole Nexus app. We're using a white label app to use as a communication tool, but it's a bit frustrating. So again, just being a bit, we can't sit still. So we're looking at developing like our own in-house app for Nexus. That will take a while to get going. So it's going to be really fit for purpose. It's really got a global outlook and perspective. We want it to be the app that globally all creatives go to. It's got something for everyone in there. So that's a big project that will at least take 18 months to go through the whole scoping phase. But yeah, we've got a few bits we're working on. And also just survive, making sure that we're getting through this period and we can come out the other end.
Well, let us know if we can support with any of those things, especially the app as you go forward.
Cool.
I'd like to thank everybody for participating. Thank you to the audience for joining us, and to the folks that asked questions, Alyssa, Taylor. And just to say, you can find us, I'll post the links to everybody who was online. I'd like to say thank you to Swakara, to Roxanne, to Ainsley, to Kim, to Mark, and to Natasha. I'd like to say thank you to Ren for producing and Norman for keeping the Zoom call up. and everybody that joined us. You can find us at SE London Salon on Instagram, Southeast Salon on Twitter, and Southeast Salon on Facebook. The next salon is on Monday, the 29th. It's always a Monday. We're going to try to do this once a month. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, please do at one of those platforms. And you guys be safe. Have a great night. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jason. Much appreciated.
Thanks.
Jason.